Have you ever heard of the Ouija Board game? The game featured in famous horror films like Ouija and The Exorcist, a game said to open a door between our world and the world of spirits and demons. Some consider it a myth, while others swear they experienced a real nightmare after trying it. In this video, I'll tell you the story of 5 college students who decided to try this game in an abandoned villa in the middle of the forest, and it was the worst night of their lives. Before we begin, don't forget to support the channel by clicking the subscribe button and activating the notification bell. If you like this type of scary stories, like the video to encourage us to continue creating more. They were 5 young men studying at a major university in a busy city, bound together by one thing: the weight of daily life and the pressure of lectures and exams. Adam, the quietest of them, excelled in his studies, but struggled internally between his desire to succeed and his need to escape all this pressure. Andre, always humorous, tried to lighten the mood of his friends no matter how difficult the situation. Wyatt, the burly young man, hid behind his tough exterior, but deep down he was afraid of the simplest things. John, the most serious, was always focused on his books and lessons, but he desperately needed to laugh and enjoy life. Eric, on the other hand, was a chaotic element, concerned with nothing but living in the present moment and enjoying any adventure presented to him. One day, after a long week of exams, they all sat in the university courtyard, signs of exhaustion evident on their faces. Andre said, throwing his bag on the floor, "I'm sick of this routine. We need a real change. We need a place that will free us from this pressure." Adam raised his eyebrows questioningly. Andre smiled mysteriously. "I have the perfect place, an old villa in the middle of a remote forest. It used to belong to my grandfather. I haven't visited it in years, but I remember it being completely isolated. No neighbors, no noise, just you and the forest." A brief silence fell, and they exchanged glances. The proposal, though strange, was tempting. Eric was the first to get excited. "Adventure! That's what I want! Let's go!" Wyatt sighed and said hesitantly, "I don't like dark forests, but maybe I should try something new." John looked at them all and nodded. "Okay, let's consider it a short, relaxing trip before hell begins again at university." It wasn't hours before they were on the road in Andre's car, their laughter rising to the beat of the music. It had started as a pleasant outing, but gradually the atmosphere began to change as they approached the forest. The sky turned gray, and clouds gathered in an unfamiliar way. At the entrance to the forest, fog seemed to creep across the road like a cold, white snake, until Andre had to slow down. Distant animal sounds pierced the silence, some the howls of wolves, others the cries of strange birds whose source they couldn't identify. Wyatt sat in the back seat, staring out the window, trying to hide his anxiety, while Eric continued to comment sarcastically on every sound he heard, as if challenging the forest itself. Finally, after hours of driving, the villa appeared in the distance, half hidden among the dense trees. It was large but weathered by time, its windows darkened like eyes silently watching them. When Andre stopped the car in front of the rusty iron gate, silence fell over the group for a moment. Adam said in a low voice, as if he could read everyone's thoughts, "This place doesn't seem very friendly at all." Andre laughed, trying to break the awe of the moment. "Come on, guys, it's just an old villa. It's gonna be an unforgettable adventure." But no one commented. They all looked at the villa as if they were facing something alive, waiting for them. They took their first steps inside the gate, a strange feeling weighing on their chests. The air was unnaturally cold, and the wind stirred the tree branches as if whispering something incomprehensible. They didn't know that this night would be the beginning of a nightmare none of them would ever forget. As soon as they opened the door to the villa, the smell of dampness lingered in the ancient walls, as if they hadn't smelled fresh air for decades. The walls were cracked, the floor creaked under their feet, and spiders wove their webs in the corners as if guarding the place. But the group didn't care. They were immersed in their laughter and sarcastic comments, trying to turn the awe of the place into light-hearted humor. It was nearly 6 p.m., and the sun was slowly setting behind the dense trees surrounding the villa. Long shadows were creeping in with every passing minute. There was no source of light inside the house, so they had to use their phones as flashlights, shining a light on each room one by one as they explored the place. The villa was eerily spacious, containing numerous rooms and long hallways, each one seemingly leading to another world. Dust covered everything, tables, chairs, and even the mirrors, which now reflected only the ghosts of their faces under the fading flashlight. Still, they didn't lose their enthusiasm. Each of them chose the room they would later sleep in. They laughed and joked about the ghosts that might be hovering over their heads while they slept. Even Wyatt, who had been the most nervous of the bunch, began to smile a little as he got used to the place. The hours passed quickly, and as 11 p.m. approached, the laughter was louder than ever. They all sat in the main living room, surrounded by old furniture covered in white sheets like shrouds. The air was cooler, and the wind outside began to whistle through the broken windows like a distant whistle. Suddenly, Andre interrupted the laughter with a short, low-pitched sentence, but it was enough to silence everyone. "Guys, who isn't scared here?" There was silence. They exchanged glances for a moment before Wyatt broke the silence with a nervous smile. "What do you mean by that strange question, Andre?" Andre sat up more seriously and said with a sly smile, "I suggest we play a different game, a game called Ouija." Amazement was evident on the faces of the others. None of them had ever heard of the name before. Eric raised his eyebrows and said, laughing, "Ouija? What is this game anyway? Explain it to us." Andre approached them and answered calmly, "It's not just a game. It's an ancient board, said to be able to communicate with the other world, spirits, and even things we can't see." Little laughter rose among the group, but Andre didn't laugh. He looked at them with serious eyes and said, "This board isn't just any ordinary board. My grandfather bought it a long time ago for a large sum from a magician. He always said it was the key to understanding the world beyond ours." Wyatt responded sarcastically, trying to lighten the tension. "Okay then, bring us this board so we can see if it's worth all the fuss." Andre stood up and said, "Wait here, I'll go upstairs and get it." He walked slowly up the wooden stairs, which creaked with every step. The others sat around, exchanging jokes, trying to dispel a vague feeling that had begun to creep into their hearts. John said, laughing, "Imagine, guys, anyone would pay so much money for a painting. It seems that Andre's grandfather was naive, or that someone had tricked him." They all laughed. Even Adam smiled, But deep inside each of them was a strange feeling that they were about to do something they shouldn't have. Those sarcastic words John had said would later become something he would regret, something he wished he'd never said. Upstairs, Andre had reached his grandfather's old room. The air was cooler there, and the room was filled with old objects and dusty boxes. On the table in the corner was the wooden painting he'd come for. He dusted it off, and a shudder ran through his body when he touched it, as if something in the room wasn't happy with him leaving with it. He took the painting and slowly descended to his friends, who were waiting for him, each one watching the stairs with anticipation mixed with curiosity and fear. Andre returned a few minutes later, carrying the wooden board. It was a bit heavy and looked as if it had been worn for generations. He placed it on the table in the center of the room, and the friends gathered around it with curiosity and some caution. Andre smiled mysteriously and said, "Here's the board I told you about." Wyatt leaned closer, staring at the strange inscriptions on it. He said, "Okay, Andre, before we play, what are the rules?" Andre sat down with them, his voice becoming more serious, as if he were about to perform a real ritual. Then he said, "It's simple, but you must follow the instructions carefully. All of you hold hands, place your fingers on the wooden pointer here, then repeat the word Ouija 7 times in a row. After that, we can ask the questions one by one, and the board will answer yes or no by moving the pointer to the appropriate direction." John laughed sarcastically and shook his head. "Do you really expect us to believe these superstitions? You seem to want to make a fool of us tonight." Andre responded very calmly, as if trying to convince them one last time. "Don't be afraid. You have nothing to lose. Just try it. If nothing happens, we can laugh and throw the board away." The friends exchanged glances, then finally agreed. They sat in a circle, each placing their fingers on the wooden pointer. The air in the room suddenly felt cool, as if a window had opened onto another world. They began chanting in unison, "Ouija, Ouija, 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 Ouija." As the chanting ended, there was a heavy silence for several seconds. Suddenly, the pointer moved slowly toward the center of the board, resting between the words yes and no, as if waiting for a question. Everyone's breathing quickened, and they exchanged looks of astonishment. The first to regain his composure was Andre, who smiled and said, "See, there's no need to be afraid. I'll start the question." He cleared his throat and then said in a semi-serious voice, "Ouija, did you drink milk this morning?" The pointer immediately moved to yes. Everyone laughed as if this was just a game again. Wyatt said, laughing, "My turn now. Ouija, does 1 + 1 = 3? This time, the pointer moved quickly to no. They laughed even more, and the atmosphere became less tense. Then it was Eric's turn, who said in a low voice, "Ouija, am I popular with girls?" The pointer moved slowly this time to yes. Eric roared with laughter and stood halfway up as if he'd just received an official diploma, joking with his friends. "See? Even spirits know I'm irresistible." John grumbled and said, "Well, my turn now. Ouija, will I get married in the future? The pointer moved to yes. John smiled with relief and said, Great, at least I'll find someone to put up with me. Only Adam remained. He remained silent for a moment, then raised his head and stared at the board with a seriousness no one had expected. He said in a deep voice, Oh, Ouija, are you a demon? As soon as the question was answered, the pointer moved swiftly toward yes. Their laughter stopped abruptly. Everyone felt a shiver run through their bodies. The wind rose outside, and one of their phones suddenly went off. Before anyone could say a word, Andre's face suddenly turned as if he'd been struck with dizziness, and he fell violently to the ground. Everyone rushed to his aid, terrified. Andre, wake up! But Andre was lying on the ground, his eyes wide open, breathing heavily, as if something was strangling him. The pointer on the board continued to move slowly on its own, circling as if drawing words they couldn't read. An eerie silence fell over the place, broken only by Andre's voice, who suddenly started laughing, a strange, heavy laugh that didn't sound like his voice at all. Silence fell suddenly after Andre fell, and then the only light on his phone went out. The villa fell into complete darkness, and the only sound was the pounding of their hearts. Adam gasped as he tried to turn his phone back on, but the battery was completely dead. Suddenly, he heard a faint voice, like a distant murmur, come out of nowhere. Oi! Adam's blood froze. He quickly turned around, but it was pitch black. His hands shook as he unlocked his phone again, pressed the flash button, and a beam of light shot through the darkness. What he saw made him take 2 steps back and nearly fall to the ground. None of his friends were there. Not Andre, not Wyatt, not John, not Eric. The table was empty, and the painting remained motionless. He was completely alone inside the villa. He shouted at the top of his lungs, Andre, Wyatt, John, Eric, where are you? But only the echo of his own voice echoing off the walls of the villa answered. It was cold, frightening, as if mocking him. He felt a chill run through his body and ran to the front door, trying to get out, muttering with anger mixed with fear. Damn it, I should have listened to my instincts. We shouldn't have played that damned game. He reached the door, lifted his phone to shine a light on the lock, and there he saw something he hadn't imagined even in his worst nightmares. Standing in front of the door was a tall, black figure, its body distorted, its head slowly tilting left and right as if studying Adam's features. It was a Ouija demon. Her face was split, and her eyes glowed a blood-red color. She smiled a slow smile, revealing long, sharp teeth, then tilted her head even more, almost touching her shoulder. Adam's knees buckled, and he fell to the ground. He couldn't scream. He couldn't move. The demon began making loud noises, then began repeatedly banging her head against the wall until blood ran down the wall. The sound was so terrifying that it made the walls of the villa shake. Gathering his courage, Adam staggered up and ran toward the stairs, climbing to the second floor at top speed. With each step, he heard the sound of heavy footsteps slowly following behind him. He entered the first room he came across, quickly closing the door behind him, panting heavily. He turned to face the center of the room, where his heart nearly stopped. Andre's head lay on the table, his eyes open, smiling a terrifying smile. Then his head began laughing loudly before suddenly letting out a sharp scream that pierced Adam's ears. He opened the door and ran out of the room, panting frantically. He entered another room and slammed the door shut. He then threw himself on the ground and hid under the bed. He could hear his heart pounding. After a few brief moments of silence, he heard slow breathing next to him, right next to his ear. He turned around very slowly, and there he saw the Ouija demon's face under the bed, staring at him with her red eyes. Adam screamed with all his might, quickly crawled out of the bed, opened the door, and ran toward the stairs. He went down to the first floor, rushed toward the door again, but this time the demon wasn't there. He opened the door and ran out of the villa into the middle of the forest. The night was pitch black and fog covered everything. He ran without stopping, stumbling through the trees. He turned around and saw the demon running after him at an unnatural speed, her footsteps snapping through the branches and her screams filling the forest. He increased his speed, running as if his life depended on it, and it did. His survival instinct took over. He ran until his chest felt like it was about to explode with pain. Suddenly, he crashed into a huge tree, invisible to the darkness and fog. He fell to the ground unconscious. The last thing he saw before his eyes closed was the shadow of the demon rapidly approaching him. And then, everything disappeared. When he opened his eyes, the forest was completely silent. There was no sign of the demon, his friends, or even the voice that had been chasing him a moment ago. The clock on his phone read 3 a.m. Adam slowly opened his eyes. The bright white light above him made him blink repeatedly before realizing where he was. He was lying on a white bed in a cold room. The sounds of medical monitors filled the room with a monotonous hum. He turned around slowly and found Eric, Wyatt, and John sitting beside him on plastic chairs, their faces pale as if they hadn't slept in days. Eric approached the bed and said in a hoarse voice, "Adam, I'm finally awake." Adam sat up, trying to catch his breath. His head was pounding and every muscle in his body ached. He whispered, his voice cracking, What happened? Where's Andre?" They looked at each other in heavy silence. Then Eric said, breathing deeply. Adam, he let us. When that madness started at the villa, when the painting moved on its own, we were scared and lost control. We ran to the car, not knowing what to do. Andre wasn't with us. Adam raised his eyebrows in shock. You left me there? Wyatt lowered his head and said, We were scared. We didn't think. When we returned with the police in the morning, we found you lying in the woods next to a tree with a Ouija board on the ground next to you. It was as if someone had put it there on purpose. Adam swallowed hard, his heart pounding. And Andre? He asked in a low voice. There was another silence before John answered. They found him on the second floor of the villa. He was hanging by his feet from the ceiling, tied with old ropes. His face was disfigured. It was as if he had died of a panic attack. Adam's hand trembled. He felt the room spinning. Everything he had experienced the night before came flooding back to him. The demon, the screaming, Andre's severed head that he had seen in the room. So, it wasn't a nightmare, Adam whispered to himself, as if speaking to someone else. He closed his eyes tightly and lay back on the bed. He no longer wanted to speak. His heart felt too heavy to beat. His friends silently left the room a few minutes later, leaving him with the cold light and the hum of the computers. A hot tear trickled down his cheek, but he didn't wipe it away. Outside, it was raining heavily, and the sky was a gloomy gray. That night, which they thought they would spend escaping the pressures of university, had turned into the saddest memory of their lives. Nothing was the same. They were no longer the young people who laughed and joked. They were just people who tried to survive, and they survived physically, but their souls remained trapped in that villa, deep in the forest. And so these students lived through one of the most miserable nights of their lives. Their lives were never the same after that experience with the Ouija board. If you enjoyed the story and want more scary and mysterious stories, don't forget to subscribe and activate the notification bell so you never miss a new video. Support us by liking this video if you enjoyed it. Share your thoughts with us in the comments. Would you dare try the Ouija board? Or will you stay away from it forever?